Hello and welcome to Sport Vibes on DNT Work. Of course, this is that platform where you have the opportunity of catching up with some of the latest updates across the world of sports, while we also take pleasure in not just getting entertained, but also taking life lessons from the world of sports. My name is Bolaji Alimi, the Sport Pilot, and I'll be your host yet again. So get set for this ride. Welcome back to Sport Vibes on DNT Work. This week, what we'll be focusing on is something entirely different from the on-field actions or on-track actions in the world of sports as it's our culture. We will be looking at something different from the on-field actions this time around. Of course, we will still talk about football on this episode, but what we'll be talking about is the transfer market. Of course, one of the major things that happened in the last week is that the transfer window, which has been open for quite a while now, got shut eventually, and quite a number of deals were done on the deadline day. Very important deals to some clubs. If you look at the run of their results lately, some teams who thought they were confident enough or good enough to face the whole season with the kind of squad they had before the beginning of the season found out with the kind of result they started getting at the beginning of the season that they needed reinforcements, they needed solidity and squad depth in some other areas. Of course, injuries did not do some clubs like Chelsea any good as well. Injuries to key players like N'Golo Kante for Chelsea, a very crucial central midfielder for the team. And of course, the kind of results a club of Chelsea's caliber has been having this season so far meant that they needed to go into the transfer market and get an out-and-out striker, some other players that can make things happen for them. Of course, Wesley Fofana came in from Leicester too towards the deadline day. And of course, not just Chelsea exclusively, we have several other clubs that had big signings. Of course, many people believe that many of these players are seeming panic buys or overpriced assets by this time of the window. And that makes sense because this time around, I'm talking about the period around the time which the transfer window was shut. Many of the clubs that would be selling their key players to bigger teams did not have the luxury of time to replace these players. So maybe the only thing they could do, if they could not stop the players from moving, if they didn't have all the power to say the players are not leaving anymore, they just had to really increase the price to at least know that it's not a lose-lose situation. If we are losing a key player, then we know we are getting quite a huge amount of money for this player at this time. So what's the reason for all the foundations we are laying concerning transfer markets and all that happened? It's just for us to learn our lesson from this angle of sport as well. Several things to be talked about on that, but right now I feel we should take a pause and mention something very important about timing in life. We've talked about this in the past, but this brings it in a different picture, that there is timing to everything. Whatever we have to do, there is a right time for the approach. There's a time appointed by God for us to do these things. We don't have all the time in the world. It will not be appropriate at every time. So there are certain things you get to do at a tender age, as an infant. You may not have the time to do them later. As a youth or a young adult, there are things you can do because you still have the energy, you have the strength, the vitality to do so, which you may not be able to do when you're a bit older. So certain things are meant to be done at certain times. The transfer window will not be open all through the season. So many clubs, of course, all the clubs know this, but in spite of that, some clubs just decide to drag on their deals. I want to talk about some teams which we would prefer not to mention their names now, taking deals almost all the summer long and eventually not getting those players signed. This is a kind of thing that requires intentionality. You were aware as a team, and we ourselves now as individuals, some of these things you are aware that you have to do them at a certain time, so you can plan ahead for them. Teams, bigger teams that did not have the best of transfer window this time around knew what they had to do, but maybe the blame is to their hierarchy, the people at the top echelons of the club, or the manager not being intentional enough, not knowing what he wants, or probably the club that would be selling were proving to be a form of stumbling block between the player desired and the club wanting the player. Whatever the reasons are, all still boils down to the fact that there are always options. You don't just have to have a single option. Sometimes in life, we seem to fix our gaze on just one thing. If it doesn't work with this thing, then there is no other option. But God is so merciful in that He even restores when we lose some things at certain times. So let's not have our mind closed, or just of course it's good to be focused at one thing, but while you're doing that, you could have backup options. We have many people who have retirement plans even when they are not set to retire yet. If there's something else you can find doing within the short space of time while you're waiting for that desired cause of yours to to come into fruition, or whatever you desire to get, if it's not this job for me, there is no other one. While you're waiting for that very desired one, working and praying about it, why not find something else doing? Why not look at several other options? So God does not just make us a one-directional entity. He gives us as humans diverse gifts. So while this part of you that seems to be dominant is not making the kind of producing the kind of fruit you would have it produce per time, you can look at other areas of strength and maximize that while waiting. Of course, it doesn't mean you discard the major option you would have. We're saying all these things because clubs like Manchester United were after Frankie de Jong, Barcelona's midfielder, for almost all the summer, but eventually nothing genuine materialized of that. And that is a very good example among several other clubs we saw chasing a player or the other at the time and eventually not getting to sign these players. That is a very good example of maybe not accepting the fact that some things don't just work out sometimes for several reasons, sometimes beyond your control. So what we are saying is that while these things are not materializing, they may eventually. Who knows whether Frankie de Jong is still going to come to Manchester United in January or in the nearest future. But as at this time, as at the summer transfer window we are reviewing, it was almost clear at some points that this guy was not going to come to Manchester United for several reasons. So all we are saying is that while these options of ours in our own endeavors as well are not materializing, or to be more specific, that very option you would want, that piece that seemed to complete your jigsaw is not really coming through, don't just think that is all God can do. There is no other option. We can feel free to seek our maker's face for something else. And so it's all about timing. It's all about knowing the appropriate time for everything we have to do. We don't have all the time in the world to do things. Thank you so much for joining us on Sport Vibes this week. My name is Bolaji Alimi and I've had the privilege of being your host yet again. Till next time, bye for now. Thank you so much for watching Sport Vibes on DNT Work. If you enjoyed the video, ensure you subscribe, like, and share the video. Thank you.